Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Good morning from sunny Maryland here in the United States. Sure it's different times all over the world where you guys are from, so thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with me. Hi everyone, I'm back. Hopefully everything looks good now. I just reset the router, that's all I did. Hopefully it'll stay up this time. I'm so sorry. So many of you were here and now you're gone. Hopefully you come back. But anyhow, what I was trying to say is welcome to my live stream, Sunday live stream, where we talk about photography and answer any questions you might have about photography and Olympus cameras in general. Any kind of technical questions. And I really appreciate your time. Microphone. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here with me. It's always the highlight of my day to catch up with everyone and see how you're doing, and hopefully provide some education or some value content that you may want to watch this after the stream if you're not here now. So, looking at my connections, looking good. Let's see, what's this about Apple? I see Walter here, Plato, Casper, hi, Kristen, Johannes, Apple, and I see Nature with Music, Jeff Painter, awesome. I'm glad. Everybody looks like you guys are starting to come back. I'm so sorry. But I guess while most of us are here, sorry, I keep looking over at this other screen to check the connection. Just quick announcement is next week, Sunday at this time, and hopefully I don't have any connection issues, but I'm going to have the second annual Micro Four Thirds online meetup like we did last year. And I'm going to have all of the same guests, but an additional new guest, Joe Edelman. So there'll be Peter Forsgaard, Robin Wong, Jimmy Chang, Emily Lowry, Maddie Salanto, and then of course Joe Edelman. So that's the lineup for now. We're going to finalize everything by Tuesday, and then start actually promoting on all the social media on Wednesday. So when you see the link up on my page for next week's stream, it'd really help out if you could share that link on your social media in different places so that we can have a big crowd, because we're going to talk about a lot of topics about photography for 2021 and what our hopes, dreams, are for that, and and then some other fun stuff too towards the end. And then after that, I'll stay on to answer any of your questions as usual. So we still have our time, right? But anyhow, let me see. My chat window is not working. Let me try and refresh it. If I figure out how to do this, I have no idea. Usually F5 works. Yeah, F5 keyboards. I'm like so I really love keyboard shortcuts and using the keyboard for most things, because that you have a tactile physical button that you push to do things. I know the connection is usually wireless between the keyboard and mouse, like in my case, but all the same, that having that physical connection with your equipment. And I think that carries on to our cameras as well. I like to have as many buttons and dials as we can on a camera. And I understand, it's sometimes simpler is better, right? Because really all you need is like a full manual camera, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. But being able to control the camera and customize it in a way that you can be more efficient when you're in the field, I don't think there's really any substitute for physical buttons. So that's that's what my thought of the day is. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you like simpler cameras, with less buttons and dials and just the basics, or do you prefer having all the customizability that the cameras offer today? And I've talked, you know, at length about the ergonomics of the Olympus cameras. Um, I really should do a dedicated video to that, because the last video I did on that was really in comparison to, say, a Panasonic S5. And I always say it's important to compare uh, something to something else, because otherwise, you know, you need a baseline, basically, to say if there's an improvement or not in a particular feature or physical attribute of a camera when you're talking about the physical body. And Olympus is really, I think, has done the very best. I mean, I've never held, say, a Canon 1D, you know, where they get lots of praise for their cameras as well. I'll have to, next time I go on a photo walk, I'll have to, with the photo club, I'll have to see if anyone has a Canon 1D or something with them that I can just try, because, you know, they're little entry-level cameras and things like that. The expectations are pretty low, and they probably don't put as much care and thought into those as they do their higher-end cameras. The only Canon I've actually had any time with that's a Canon is the RP, their entry-level full frame. And it was perfectly fine. I think they did put a lot of thought into the design of the camera, and it was comfortable to hold. But that said, I still much prefer the EM1s, you know, the OMD cameras, EM1 Mark II, Mark III in particular. The quote of the week: there's no substitute for physical buttons. That's right, Rick. And Photo by Sturgis says, without all the features and options, we might as well use our cell phone camera. Exactly. And Jeff says he loves having 4 custom settings on the dial in the M1 Mark III. Yeah, 4 is better than 3, right? That was one of the additions they did to the M1 Mark III over the M1 Mark II, was now it has 4 custom modes on the dial instead of 3. And I you know, now that it's there, I love having it, you know, being able to switch to that quickly. And the M1 Mark III, this camera here, is primarily, I use this for my professional work now. So on the M1 Mark II, which I used previously, was, you know, C123 was fine, but time to time I had to switch to aperture priority to do something else, right? That's work related. But having the C4 now, I don't have to turn the dial all the way over. It's from 3 to A is, you know, 4 notches. Now I just have to turn it 1 click. And I had a program for high-res shot mode. So when I do my single image type shots, when I do my professional work, and everything I do is still life in real estate and architectural type photography, I don't have to worry about motions. So I can do handheld high-res shot very quickly now on C4. And then C1, 2, and 3 are, you know, the various modes that I have to shoot in with bracketing and flash, and also for some spot metering situations where I need to spot meter. And those are the only kind of things I need to do is bracketing, the flash shot, spot metering, and now the 4th mode I have set up for high-res shot. So 4 is better than 3. And Nature says, just got back from a photo walk with the M1X and a 300mm with the 1.4 teleconverter. Got my first photos of a kingfisher. Awesome. Kingfishers are like the best birds, right? I love kingfishers because they're kind of small, but they're really cool. They're just cool looking. They got that crown usually. They have their crown up, and they have this white stripe on their eyes, and it kind of fools you into what they're actually looking at. So I guess that's a defense mechanism of some kind. I don't know anything about birds, but they're pretty amazing to get photographs of. And they have that just beautiful blue and white contrast on their feathers. And if you can catch them diving and catching a fish or eating a fish, I got one video of a kingfisher eating a fish about the same size it was. I can't believe it swallowed the whole thing. I wish I should keep a shortcut to it so you guys could see it, but I don't think I have it. And Giuseppe says the only problem is to remember what 1, 2, 3, or 4. Yeah, and that just comes with, using them all the time. For my professional work, those are the only settings I use. So it's very clear to me, uh, when I'm changing the dials, what mode I'm in. And there's also some visual cues on the live view, what mode you're in. So if I'm in my C2, my bracketing mode, I'll see a little bracketing icon on the live view. And also, of course, in the bottom left corner, it tells you what mode you're in, C1, 2, 3, or 4, in the bottom left. So you have those visual cues as well. But like on my Pen F or my EM5 Mark II, I'm constantly changing what the custom modes are. And usually what I do is I'll do a reset on the camera before I start a photo walk, and then program them to what I think I'll need. And like the Pen F, I'll program certain color modes or monochrome modes that I like and set them up for the scene that I'm at, whether it's a photo walk at a park or street photography, which really only two kinds of photography I do, and for personal stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit of a task to remember what they were last set at, because a lot of times I end up setting them to the same thing I did before. But that's the beauty of it, is there's so much flexibility in the settings in our cameras, particularly in Olympus. You have highlight, shadow, you have color wheels, all the art modes, tons of bracketing modes, and then as you move up the line, you have high-res shot, live ND, all kinds of stuff. So you can do everything, right? And being able to program them in before each photo walk, it takes like 10 or 15 minutes of prep. But then you can kind of relax and focus on the scene or the composition with with the settings in mind, what it's going to look like, right? And that's that's why I love photography. It's every time you can go out, it's a little bit different. It's always fun. You always see something new. Even like in my backyard, which is really, I've been doing, a lot of photography there, mostly for testing and stuff. But I always find something new or interesting. I'll be like, wow, this, why is this tree budding? Why are the roses growing in the wintertime? I got roses, actually, to my front yard. I got roses growing on one side of the rose bush, and then the other side, it's bare like winter, right? I can't figure that out. All I can think of is because it's in the shade. That's where the roses are growing. It's weird. So I might take some pictures of that today. Let's see. Speaking of motion, any tips for I'm sorry. Speaking of motion, any tips for low light motion photography? Well, it depends on, I mean, that's the problem with giving advice or making recommendations and tips. It always depends, right? But generally speaking, you have to get a feel for what the motion is. If it's just people type motion, usually if you get down to 1/10 of a second or lower, you'll get a little bit of motion blur in the people, and sometimes that's desirable. You may need to get down to 1 second, if you want a little bit more motion blur. But if you do more than that, the people start to disappear, right, from the scene, assuming they're backlit from store lights or whatever. If it's a different type of motion, like automobiles, they're moving much faster. And again, you could probably work with 1/30th of a second and get just a slight blur of the vehicles. Whereas with a person, it might freeze them. And the beauty of low light motion is you can set the ISO pretty low and remove a lot of the noise or unwanted noise. If you want noise, yeah, leave the ISO where it is, but you can get rid of a lot of the unwanted noise. And then usually the other challenge in low light is the lighting that's available to you. So if it's tungsten lighting, like a lot of street lamps, you may want to adjust your white balance. for that sort of lighting. You can do custom white balance with a little piece of paper under a street lamp, or you can set the white balance to the store lights, which are usually fluorescent or LED. So think about how you want the light to look relative to the subjects and how far away they are from the light and how much influence that light has. Because you usually are in very mixed lighting situations. Because street lights, a lot of times are tungsten, very yellow. Car lights, most modern cars now are LED. Some still are halogen, but for the most part, we're in LED world now on cars. And store lighting can be fluorescent, which will cast a green. So I think in low light photography, and I'm talking about street photography mostly, right? I always consider the white balance when I'm out shooting, unless you're doing black and white, obviously. But even in black and white, adjusting the white balance can affect the look. So experiment with that as well. But yeah, shutter speeds are going to depend on what kind of motion you're trying to capture. If you want long streaks of cars, right, the car lights streaking down the road, then we're talking 2, 3, 4 seconds at least, sometimes 30 seconds if it's not very busy, right? You're waiting for 1 or 2 cars to go by. You may need a good 20, 30-second exposure. So you'd have to consider stopping your aperture down to minimize the amount of light coming in. And you know, one of the best features on our Olympus cameras is the live composite. So practice using a live composite as well if you want to do streaks and, you know, see light trails and things like that. That would be another feature that's fairly unique to Olympus. Not so much anymore. I think Panasonic has it now in some of theirs, but definitely live composite and white balance are your strongest considerations. And Ron Hadd is saying, "Hi Rob, hope you're well. Thank you, I am. And you? And could you please tell me if the Olympus Digital ED 30mm f3.5 macro is compatible with in-camera focus stacking on the EM5 Mark II? I cannot tell you directly because I don't have that lens. Let me just look it up real quick. Compatible. All right, so we have the 30mm f3.5. I mean, if someone has that lens and knows right off the bat, that would be great. You could tell them. Oh, that's not going to give me anything. What I really need is there's a way to look it up on Olympus's website, but I'm macro compatible camera. All right, it says here compatible. So it says there. Oh, so are not. Stack. I don't see anywhere it says stacking compatible. Yeah, sorry, I don't see anything off the bat if it is. Maybe so one of the viewers can answer directly on that one. I'm sorry. It is focus bracketing compatible, no question, but focus stacking, I don't know. Although I've recently bought the EM1X with super deal price, I'm still looking at the EM1 Mark III as an update to my Mark II. Really? I mean, I'm not sure what the EM1 Mark III would offer over the EM1X other than just being a little smaller if you don't add a grip to it. I think the only thing you really gain maybe is Starry Sky AF with the EM1 Mark III. So if you already have the EM1X, I'm not sure that would be money well spent to get an EM1 Mark III. I mean, if you just want a smaller, lighter setup, it does offer significant features over the EM1 Mark II. That would make sense, but as a replacement or... Yeah, I guess you're looking at it as an update to the Mark II. But like I said, it doesn't add anything over the M1X. It does have excellent face detect, though. That is a significant update over the M1 Mark II, definitely. Adam Favors asking, hey Rob, does Workspace allow for a composite of 2 images to do double exposure? Yes, it does. It's in one of the drop-down menus. It's called Composite, I think. And that, I've used that a few times to do some kind of neat effects. But it's here, it's under, yeah, it's under the Tools menu. Right here. Composite images. You can do lighten composite, focus stacking, multiple composite, but these are basically, yeah, double exposure type functions. So experiment with those. It's really pretty good feature. I'll show you one picture maybe. Let me see. That I did. I didn't do a double exposure. I did multiple exposures. Let me scroll down. It should be fairly new. I think I did it last year. Yeah, this one. Here's one. Here's one I did. I did this in Workspace where I took one image. You know, I took a single image of this building and then I skewed it left and right using the keystoning tools. And then stacked them together with the composite mode. And here's another one I did. Let's see. This one didn't come out so great. This one's kind of neat though. And well, I think that's it. I think that's all I did. Just a few examples here on my Flickr page. Okay. And Nature says, missed the shot with the kingfisher eating the fish, disappeared in the bush. Yeah. But just, you know, once you find where the kingfisher is, I found that they usually stay in that same spot. So every time there's this one place in a park that I go to that if I see the kingfisher, I know I can come back anytime and he'll be there again. You know, just pay attention to the timing and the location, and they're usually there again. Once they find a good feeding spot, they like to come back. They may even nest nearby. I mean, I don't know what their habits are, but there's this one place in a park that every time I go there, you know, during that season, there's a kingfisher there. So I've gotten shots there many times, but it's so far away. I would need like a 300 millimeter with a 2x teleconverter to get a good shot of it, but I've gotten some shots. And Mike Ham is asking, what are your most common settings for custom modes? Depends on the camera. If it's my Pen F, I will have a color profile, custom mode, a monochrome profile, custom mode. So usually color profile number 2, monochrome profile number 2. And then I'll do standard aperture priority, natural color profile. And once in a while, I may do sort of an art bracketing mode. I don't do that quite as much anymore because I'm pretty familiar with all the art filters now that I can kind of pick and choose when I want to use one. But that's what I usually do on the Pen F. On, you know, say my EM5, or let's say my EM1 Mark II and Mark III, usually I'll have different focusing modes and shutter modes. So, you know, mode 1 might be just simple aperture priority, single shot, single point autofocus, and I'll assign where I want the focus point to be. Usually the bottom left thirds is where I put the focus point as the default home setting. And then custom mode 2 will be sort of my sports action type settings. So I go into shutter priority, I set the shutter speed to 1/1000th of a second, and then I choose continuous autofocus, continuous low shutter speed, and the focus points will be usually a 5-point grid. And those are the two I think most common, I would say. And then if I'm feeling creative, I might add a third one for monochrome with highlights and shadows adjusted accordingly. If I'm using like the M1 Mark III that doesn't have all of the special features that the Pen F does. So that's what I normally do. Depending. If it's an OMD, those are my settings. If it's a Pen F, you know, I use the color profiles or the special features. And Johannes de Wald says, I have the C1 at HDR, C2 at high res, C3 free, and C4 for sports. Yeah, that's common too. HDR usually I assign to a button. I don't assign it to a custom mode. And high res, I don't do too much. So I rarely have that programmed to anything. You know, I rarely have high-res programmed to something. And then, of course, sports settings. And Randy is saying, I have a post-it note behind the external EVF for my custom modes. Yeah, why not? Post-it notes, write it on your hand, you know. And Magrat has positioned herself between me and robtrek on my TV. She's trying to stare me out. You know, it's funny. I notice Ellie watches TV sometimes. She'll be just staring at the screen. Usually when it's animals on the screen and there's the sound to go with it. But sometimes she's just watching with me, which is interesting. And hey, Leon, how are you? And Nature says, started using Olympus Video C4K in addition to my Pana 4K, 10-bit, etc. Getting some nice results working on a new video clip shot using C4K now. Awesome. So I would assume if you're saying 10-bit, you're recording externally in C4K to get the 10-bit output. And that would be on the M1 Mark III, because I think the M1 Mark II and the, you know, the M5s, etc., are all 8-bit output through the HDMI. And it's only the M1 Mark III, I think, has the 10-bit 422 C4K output. And Randy, the same reason that the X doesn't get astrofocus, the M1 III will not get bird AI. They want cameras differentiated from each other. I suppose that's as good a reason as any, right? Hey Dragos, how are you? 1024. Wow, I'm running behind here on the comments because I rambled on about something. Low lighting outside in the UK is this time of year. Yeah. And live comp will give you motion. Yep, we're going back to what I was talking about there. 30 macro. So Jeff Painter does confirm that 30 macro will do focus stacking. Again, stacking is different than bracketing. Stacking does this, puts the images together in camera. And Leon is also confirming it does have focus stacking. So thank you. Thank you for answering that for me. It's just not a lens I have. I'm not a big macro guy. I like close-up photography with macro extension tubes, but that's not true macro, right? That's really close-up photography. And oh my goodness, thank you, Sturkus. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. Every little bit helps. And you know, my goodness, I got a really generous donation last night. Really surprised me. So thank you, David, for that. I really appreciate that. But I did send you an email in case you made a mistake, because there were too many zeros on it. And let's see, Nature says the reason for having the Mark III and the M1X is that the Mark III would work much better when shooting at ground level. Ah, yes, I can see where the grip would be an issue on the M1X. Excellent point. There's always something, you know, you don't think about it sometimes when you're buying a camera, what limitations the size of the camera might impose, right? So yeah, double grip camera would limit you how low you can get down to the ground, right? And Jeff Painter says the Olympus Macro 30 definitely does focus stacking. Thank you, Jeff. And Rick is asking, what does everyone think about all of these AI features? Pretty soon we'll have the natural language user interfaces, so we'll just say photograph the kingfisher and leave the camera on the tripod. Wow. I think if we get to that point, honestly, I think at one point, cameras will just be a little contact lens you put in your eye, and you just have to think about what you want to take a picture of, or it'll just continuously record, you know, in some high resolution, right? Say 100 megapixels right in your contact. And then at the end of the day, if you want to extract any pictures from your day's events, you can just print it off or create a hologram, right? I mean, it's going to get there eventually one day, right? You know, you just wear these contact lenses that do everything. So smartphones and cameras and any kind of media device will just be superfluous, right? You won't even need any camera controls or anything. You just think about what you want. And because it's constantly recording, it'll also do slow motion, low light motion photography. It could do everything. So I think we'll get there. So I don't have any reservation to us eventually getting to something like that. But for us here now, you know, I think we have something that it's kind of like you know, we don't do photography just for the images, right? It's about the process. I mean, like Robin Wong always says, it's phototherapy, and the process of going out and taking pictures is more important than the pictures, you know, most of the time, at least for me. And you get some satisfaction from your images, but, you know, in my case, they're never going to be epic or anything I can just start selling. You know, they're just pictures for me to enjoy and go through that process. It's you know, and it's similar to, like, I was thinking about this for you know, I set up my stereo best I can with what I have, and it's a nice little system. You know, it's a crowd pleaser, right? You know, I think most people that hear it would like it, but it's not a high-end audiophile hi-fi system, right? It's just a nice little system. But you know, we have CDs, I have streaming, I have vinyl, and playing vinyl, even though it's technically not perfect, right, as say a high-res stream service, which gives you excellent sound, it's the process of taking the record out of the sleeve, reading things on the album cover, putting the record on, and just hearing it all the way through every song. You know, you're not skipping songs or jumping to different tracks. And I think vinyl in general for me is more enjoyable because of the process. You know, I have to do the little anti-static brush on it before I play it, you know, and I think about when I set up the turntable, I had to balance the needle with the right weight. and I think about the engineering, or the, not engineering so much, but the craftsmanship that goes into designing turntables and audio equipment. And the same thing applies to photography, right? You think about the craftsmanship and engineering of the camera while you're taking the pictures, and try to really appreciate what the camera can do for you. But anyway, I'm kind of going off tangent here, but and what, okay, I did that one, just got here. Yes, I am in a spaceship, Hot 88. I am social distancing to the max here on the robtrek mothership. And good afternoon, Corna, good to see you. And what's the new forum message about? That's just me being lazy and not updating the footer here. It's not really new anymore. I guess it's been up almost a year or 6 months. It's still new. It's only a couple hundred members, right? And I try to read every post. I don't necessarily respond to them all, but I do try to read every new post that anyone puts in. And there's some great images you guys are posting. You know, my memory fails me now, but I do remember looking at some new images, and I really enjoy DeMorkin's posts. They're very long, but they're very deep. You know, it gives you a lot of meat to think about, and I really enjoyed DeMorkin's posts. And then seeing all of the images you guys are putting in, and then some members, they share their tips and tricks that they do, like Lee. I keep calling him Lay, but it's Lee. He corrected me in a stream earlier. But Lee posted some tripods that he likes to use and some pictures of his gear. Other members posted some images of their watches, and you know, it's just, like I said, it's just a little community where a lot of us know each other online, but this gives us a chance beyond what the chat section can do live to share more, right? Maybe links to our own websites. There's another member there that posts links to videos he creates, which are montages of images he takes. And those were very enjoyable to watch. And so yeah, it's the new forum still, kind of. But I guess now that it's been almost a year, I can just change it. And Rick says, as I said before, with the next generation of cell phone networks and those spy cameras out there, we'll just need a network to track our location and supplies with images. No cameras needed. Oh my goodness, that's so true, right? When I go into Google Maps and you can get down to the street level in a lot of cities, that's how I scope new locations if I'm going to go on a photo walk, is I look around and see what's there and what's interesting. And when I look top down, the top down view, like this, the bird's eye view, you know, I look for older buildings, you know, and they have a flat roof and just, I don't know, you can tell an older building and what's around there. So yeah, Google Maps has been, I think, one of the best aids for photographers that's not gear related, along with, you know, all the weather apps and everything like that. But as a street photographer, I prefer the Google Maps. I don't really care what time of day it is, you know, or what the weather's like, as long as it's warm. And on AI, I never know what it will free us up to do more creatively, keeping my options open and tools numerous. Yes. And that's true for all technology, right? It's designed to make our lives easier and free us up to do other things. It's kind of like the Star Trek theme, where they got rid of money, right? And everybody's free to pursue whatever it is they want. They don't have to work to make a living because everything is pretty much taken care of. All you have to do is pursue your dreams, you know, whether it be, you know, combing the stars or, you know, archaeology, whatever it is, you know. hopefully we'll get there one day where money is not an issue, and technology sort of eliminated any of these sort of societal dependencies that we have related to money or technology. It'll just be at a point that, you know, we can actually pursue whatever it is we really want to do and be the best who we can be. Because as it is now, right, because we have to split our time and we have so many different things, you know, we can't always be the best that we can be if we can't free ourselves of these other obligations. And Corna says, waiting for a new tiny prime from EM52, but will probably never happen, for I've heard the premium line will be discontinued. I hate to put bulky glass. I don't know if it's being discontinued or if it's just because a lot of the glass is going to be f4. I have such tunnel vision. I have one lens in mind that I want to get, the 8-25 f4, that I didn't pay attention to any other lenses in the roadmap or give thought to what the future of the lens lineup might be. But there's such a good selection now. You can find a prime. You'll always be able to get a prime, you know, minty used, right? And Ron Had thanks everyone for answering his 30mm Olympus macro lens question. So thank you again, everyone. And DeMorgan is here. Hello. I was just talking about you. And Randy says, yes, it's going to get, it is the going out to get somewhere to make a photo. It's definitely shutter therapy. I have to go out at least 3 or 4 times a week or I go nuts. That's awesome. And Nature says, your hi-fi system is still rock and roll. You are more than welcome to come to London and stay with us once the virus controlled and listen to my system and do street photo. Yeah, thank you. I'd love to go to London one day. And Randy says the planning, the travel, the things I see. Yeah, it's like a little mini vacation every time, right? That you bring home with you and can share with others. And Jeff Painter says, oh, DeMorgan says, thank you. I was not sure anyone read them. Yes, I definitely read them, DeMorgan. They're very thought-provoking. If not thought-provoking, very deep, you know. And Jeff says, I love playing records too. Love tweaking turntables, arms, cartridges. Yeah, I'm not, I only have one turntable. It's a stupid Crossley C6. But it's, and I know everybody gives crap about Crossley online, but it's a very modest turntable. It has actually a true, you know, half-inch replaceable cartridge mount and decently heavy platter, although there's some resonance in there. I'm thinking about getting maybe a paper mat or an acrylic mat. I haven't decided. I'm leaning towards the paper mats, not cork, but paper, right? But it's a fully manual turntable, belt driven, has a nice heavy plinth or whatever they call it, and most importantly, a dust cover. My house is so dusty having a dog. But yeah, one day I might upgrade the cartridge, maybe get an Ortophon, you know, or something. It seems ridiculous to buy a cartridge that costs 10 times the turntable, but yeah, I do love tweaking a little bit here and there. But I'm finding more and more that it's more about the how the CD or record or digital was mastered in the first place. Because sometimes I'll play the same song digital. I have the same song on digital streaming, on record, and on CD. And they all sound completely different, right? And I actually prefer the CD version most of the time. But there's another record I have where I have the digital streaming version and I have the album. And I prefer the album on that song It's just, so it was mastered differently somehow. Whoever mastered the album did a really good job, and whoever mastered the digital audio side just, I don't know, maybe it's more authentic or more true to the actual sound that the artist wanted, but I still prefer the album. So it, you know, it's, I don't think I'll ever buy a new record because I have hundreds of old records from the 80s and stuff. I was really into hip hop back in the 80s for some reason. But I think going forward, if I do buy any new songs, it'll be digital, or I'll just get a streaming service, and a high resolution streaming service. But I need to buy a good DAC if I'm going to do that. Right now I'm just streaming through like my tablet through Bluetooth onto my receiver, but it sounds good enough, you know. And Jeff Painter says, I just restarted my CGI artwork I used to do. Oh, cool. And Nature says, trying to sort out my internet networking and LAN on computers and shooting photos can be a nightmare. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't figured out what the problem is with mine. Because now, as far as I know, I've been streaming. Let me look at the connection. It says excellent. So I don't know why, because I rebooted the router before I started the stream. And it just was crap. So I rebooted again when the stream failed. And now it seems to be perfectly fine. So it's, just don't know. And Titty Totter says, hi Rob, I have a Yongnuo 565EX Nikon dedicated from my Nikon days. Does it work on the TM manually, but too sensitive at... It does work on my EM10 Mark II manually, but too sensitive as a slave. Could I buy a cheaper trigger to fire it off this camera? Yes. Yeah, I don't, what do I have? I have one Yongnuo flash. I forget which one it is. But I know the optical trigger is very sensitive, which I thought was desirable, but you're saying it's too sensitive. That's interesting. But yeah, there's a really good trigger. It's about $35. I'll pull it up for you. That I personally use. And what I like about it is the trigger itself is really tiny, and then the receiver is actually a stand for your flash. I got it. Just need to drag this over. So this is the trigger that I use. So you get like 3 triggers, different colors, along with this flash stand. And the other thing is the receiver uses AAA batteries, 2 AAAs. So I just put rechargeables in there. And then the transmitter uses just a button cell, I think a 2025 button cell. So it's very easy to get these batteries, and they're cheap, right? Unlike some radio triggers, they use those stupid CR3s or whatever, those like $8 or $9 batteries. God. So I like it because the transmitter is really small. You know, it just fits right on top of the camera very nicely. So that's what I would recommend. So I'll put a link to it there if anybody wants to use my affiliate link and buy that particular trigger. I can highly recommend it. And John Follow says, yes, on Google Maps, I have quite a few local landscape images. That's something I haven't got into, and that's something Randy does a lot of. He posts his images for Google Maps. And Randy says, my 20 mil team model for the desert shoot is about 40% now, mostly painting now. I got a lot of spoons in the soup. And Randy says, being fully retired now, I'm doing a whole lot more these days. Yeah. I can't wait to actually retire. I mean, I'm kind of semi-retired, meaning I don't, I don't have a job, but and Rick says, I was quite frustrated with the Netflix UI until I did some research and realized it's not intended to be a GUI. As soon as I thought AI, it started to make sense. I guess that's where we're going. The only thing I don't like about the next Netflix UI is the, when you hover over a movie, it just starts playing the sound, like a clip or a preview of the show. I'd rather hover over and just read a little bit for each movie or show. And then if I want a preview, I click on it and say watch trailer, kind of like Amazon. I prefer Amazon's interface for that. But they do a great job at recommending things I would like. I mean, on the one hand, it's great. It does a good job. But on the other hand, I've seen most of the things they're recommending before it was ever on Netflix, right? But it's good. It's fun to sometimes go back and watch old movies I used to like. I've been binging on another show called Black Spot. I don't know how to pronounce it in French, but it's a French. I think it's made in France, or it's a French series called Black Spot. It's kind of a cop show with a little supernatural kind of mixed in. Not too much. They're not too heavy on the supernatural, but there's a little bit there, just enough to kind of, throw a wrench into investigations and things, right? So that's what I like about it. And Chuck says, I still use the big rectilinear low boys for my mains that I bought in the 70s. Wow. Yeah, I've never heard of low boys. And all connected to the rest of the speakers for the theater system. No need for a subwoofer. Yeah. I use a subwoofer when I'm playing at low volumes, because that's just the nature of music and our natural hearing, right? Is our ears really don't hear tones in the lows and highs. And I tested my hearing just, by myself using some basic YouTube videos and things. But my hearing is only between about 80 hertz up to about maybe 11,000 kilohertz. So, and I can just barely hear 11,000. I can hear 10,000 pretty clearly. At 11,000, I have to crank the volume way up before I can hear it. And then even then, I'm not sure if I'm hearing the 11,000 kilohertz or not, or if it's just, noise in the line from the stereo itself. So effectively between 80 and 10,000 kilohertz. And, below, our ears are most sensitive at about 1,000 to 1,500 kilohertz. So that's perceivably, it's louder than the other frequencies. So you add in huge speakers or subwoofers to make up for that low end so you can hear the bass. And then they throw in, then you have horn tweeters and whatever to bring out the highs so you can hear those. And then there's a whole, just like photography, audio, you can really go all the way where, it's kind of like pixel peeping for audio, right? When you start talking about all the different components in a system, you're pixel peeping to an extent, but in an audiophile way. It's to the point that, I'd really like to get a PS Audio, their basic amp, the Sprout 100, and maybe attach that to a nice VU meter analog switch box so I can attach additional devices. But, that's $1,000, right? To get entry-level hi-fi. I don't know. I'd probably have to donate a couple of my receivers to Goodwill and then buy that, because it's just, you can't have 3 or 4 receivers in your house. It's ridiculous, right? And and just kind of go down to a simple integrated amp and then separate tuner and cassette, CD, streaming, all of that stuff hooked into a basic integrated amp. I just don't have the money to do full-on separate components, you know, separate preamps, separate amps, separate, you know. And then you talk about Class A, Class AB, Class D. You can get, like I said, you can just any kind of, really any hobby you're into, you can get really carried away, and it goes, you know, just everything gets expensive fast. But the good thing about audio, generally speaking, is once you buy it, it's very low maintenance. You know, it'll last a long time, just like our gear, our cameras and stuff. Generally, they're fairly low maintenance. Not like other hobbies, like if you're into boating or something, where something is breaking down every season, you know, if not multiple times during the season that you can go boating. What's the boat? I heard the acronym break out another 1,000 is what BOAT stands for. Break out another 1,000. And Image Rider says, hi Image Rider. Macro tubes are not equivalent to macro lens because of depth of field. No, because of the magnification. And depth of field is going to be depth of field. That's independent of the macro tubes or using a macro lens. Depth of field is controlled by aperture and distance, right? So, and then obviously the sensor size, but that's more like field of view. But anyway, macro tubes generally give you like 0.5 magnification. Rarely can they give you 1x magnification like a true macro lens, 1-to-1 magnification. And if you did try to get 1-to-1 magnification with a macro or extension tubes, you would lose so much light in the process because the lens would have to be so far away from the sensor, thereby cutting the light in half and half and half. You know, the inverse square law of light applies to just normal light as it does flash, right? So you would need to supplement that with a lot of flash, and then hey, I reboot the router again. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have to do something about this because I got a big stream coming up next week. I can't have this this kind of problem. Oh, let's see. We were talking about something. Good morning, Jim Jones. Good to see you. Records today are made from CD. They are not analog anymore, except for expensive pressings. Wow. Yeah, that's another reason not to buy brand new records, right? And Serge says, I used to get those expensive pressings, but the 16-bit streaming so far above CD, I don't do it anymore. Yeah. Digital repeat certain bits cause of the way. So Stephen Page says vinyl is loads better because nothing is taken out. Well, that in theory is the case, right? You're getting, if you're recording a full analog and they're assuming they're recording from the master tapes. I don't know why we're talking about audio, but you know, they're recording from the master tapes to record, but the records only have about a 70 decibel dynamic range. Whereas a CD at the 16-bit 44 kilohertz has a 90 to 100 megahertz or 100 decibel dynamic range. So you will get more sound from a CD in theory. But again, it's all in the mastering, right? The original mastering is how did they create the digital audio. And if they're just, you know, I don't know that much about the back end of how they do the mastering. but it is kind of very important. And like I said, I can hear differences between all three, but it flips flops from song to song. Sometimes I like the vinyl version better. Sometimes I like the CD or digital version better. And the only way to account for that is how it was originally mastered. And so there are limitations to vinyl in terms of dynamic range, or the dynamic range of 70 decibels versus CD is 100. So normally the CD always sounds best to me. And I don't have a high resolution streaming. I've tried a few, the free trials and things, but you know, I didn't want to spend another $10 or $20 a month for audio streaming, right? I guess ultimately, if I was buying CDs all the time or albums, it makes sense to go with just HD streaming instead, but I'm not. I'm very content listening to the same old songs over and over and streaming ones that I don't listen to as often. And it says, CD was 8-bit. The 16-bit is much better. I thought CDs were 16-bit, 44 kilohertz. Now, the early CDs, when CD first came out, I heard the mastering was very bad. They didn't know what they were doing, basically. But now, you know, modern CDs from the 80s and 90s and up are very good. I even bought super audio CDs, right? And I got a super audio player back, you know, in the early 2000s when I didn't know anything about audio. I just bought stuff, you know, that I thought would sound good, and let's see, Kevin Gray, Bernie, Bob Ludwig are the master recording vinyl records mastering. Wow. You guys know a lot about audio and video and photography and God, watches. It's really awesome, the diversity that we have in our interests, right? There's so many things that you can kind of get into and really enjoy. Not just photography, but all these other things, which is really cool. Yes, Rick, I agree. The more I do the plus up and downs on Netflix, the better the recommendations are, definitely. I've definitely found some good shows using that. And Titty Tutter says, I have the M1 Mark II, thinking of upgrading to the Mark IV. Does the Mark II have any useful features that the Mark IV doesn't? Thanks for the young new answer. Flash won't work as a slave unless camera flash is on full power. Oh, so it's not sensitive enough. Yeah, okay. Yeah, most of the time the optical sensor on the third-party flashes like Yongnuo and stuff suck. Even the Godok's optical flash triggers suck. The only good optical triggers I've ever found have been on hardcore brand name Nikon Canon flashes, which are very expensive. So radio trigger is the way to go. And cheaper, right? You can get a good, powerful Yongnuo flash for cheap, and then just get a cheap radio trigger. The one I recommended, though, is really good. And it allows you to use older flashes if you want, like an old SB25 or SB26 Nikon flash without damaging your digital camera, because you're not mounting the flash on the camera. And Steven says, you're getting the 28 2.8. Wait till it arrives. Awesome. I assume that's the Olympus OM lens. And Nature says, after 24 years music business, I am deaf. You have to feel the bass as well as hear it. I use a 2X subwoofer so you can feel the bass through the floor. Well, what you need is one of those kickers, right? That you put under your sofa and actually shakes your sofa physically. I saw that on Tech Moen's website or channel, the bass kicker. My my 300ZX 50th anniversary edition that I used to have had like bass kickers in the seats. They would vibrate your seats to the music. It wasn't a very good implementation. It was more annoying than it was immersive, but and the Morgan says the Sprout 100 is very good for the price. Just add a Blue Node 2i to it and nice speakers. Yeah, I'm looking at maybe they recommended ELAC 6Bs or something. I forget exactly. Maybe 2Bs. They have a package where they sell Sprout 100 with some ELAC speakers. So I'm thinking about that. But that's maybe in the spring or summer I might do that. I have to kind of save up for it. And by save up, meaning bring myself around to actually wanting to part with $1,000. Because I never save up for anything. I just, it's more like I try to think about, do I want to spend this much, whether I have the money or not? You know, just put it on credit or something. It's a terrible mentality. You should always save up to buy things you want, not the other way around, buy things and then save up, pay for it later. And nature says, yes, old audio equipment still works well. About to wire up an old transistor amplifier into my video editing room. Cool. And yes, this is where I was buffering. And reboot. Tea time. And DeMorgan says, wondering how long you can hold that pose without speaking. Our classic live streaming tools are going away soon. You can try the new live control room, which combines our classic desktop streaming tools with new and improved features. I think I am using the new live stream tool, the live control room, I'm pretty sure. I hate it if it's freezing my face in a weird, with a weird expression. You ever see that? You know, like people look normal when they're talking to you, but if you freeze a frame while they're talking to you, you can get the weirdest looks, right? Yeah, Walter says go hardwired. I'll have to buy an adapter because my laptop doesn't have a RJ45 adapter. So I have to buy one of those USB conversion adapter things. Or use a different laptop when I'm streaming. I guess that would be an option. Because my other laptop has a RJ45 in it. And Chuck says, I'm saving for the 40 to 150. An old lens, but always seems to be very popular. Yes, every image I've seen out of that lens has been excellent. And Walter says, what if the master is analog? Yeah, it's the master tapes, it's the conversion of the master tapes to whatever other medium, you know, digital, vinyl, or CD. That process of mastering is where you will hear the biggest difference in the final product. And that's something I don't have a good grip on how that's done. I mean, I have the simplest consumer version where, you know, you rip your CDs to MP3, and you can rip your CDs down to, say, 128 kilobit MP3s, which I can actually hear a difference between that and 192 kilobits. But from 192 kilobits up to, say, 350, I can't tell the difference. So I always rip CDs at 192 kilobits for space savings and audio quality. And then again, my system probably doesn't have the resolution to resolve all of the soundstage and, you know, highs and lows anyway. So that may be why I can't hear a difference over 192 kilobits. But in the simplest form, that's what mastering is, right? from the original to another format. But obviously there's a lot more to it than that, because you know, you see these sound rooms, they got these humongous boards with all these sliders and meters and all kinds of things, right? That would be true mastering. Hi Darko, I'm doing well, thank you. Other than my stream crapping out on me twice today and losing half my viewers, I'm so sorry. So sorry. What's interesting though, on the playback, you don't see all the skips and pauses so much, right? And SL says, or Darko says, I bought an 8x10 digital frame, and pulling images on to show on the frame, I realized how much crap I need to clean up in my pic files. Wow. And Serge says, before photography, I was really deep into listening vinyl records and collecting pressing, but I lost my left ear from a surgery last year. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible. To lose any of your senses, you know, can like me, my vision is blurry half the time. It's really frustrating as a photographer. I'm gonna have to see an eye doctor eventually. And SL7293 says, to me, a really good vinyl record reproduces secondary frequencies better than CD. That means the harmonics that make different instruments that play the same note sound different. Yeah, no question. I mean, there's definitely some vinyls that have really an amazing sound to them. My hearing is not as sensitive as it used to be. But like I said, I love the process of vinyl records, you know, just the whole ritual of taking it out of the cover and the sleeve and putting it on the player and all of that, which we talked about earlier. Just like in photography, that whole process is what really makes everything enjoyable. Not always the end result, because even if it's not a good vinyl press, right, like they didn't master it well, I still enjoy the music for that process and sit down and listen to it. Now, I'm not one of those people that listen to music all day long, where, you know, you need a good system so that you don't get fatigued from listening to music, if that makes any sense, right? Because if you have a bad system, you know, you can only listen for a little while before you just can't listen anymore, because just your ears are fatigued. But if you have a really good system, you can listen all day long, right? You never get tired of it. And Dave Nelson says, the recording engineer makes as much difference in audio quality as any other part of the process. Just listen to a small company, good engineers like It's a Beautiful Day, super excellent sound. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the way I understand it. And like I said, I can hear the difference on the same song among different formats. That should not be different, right? If I'm listening to CD or vinyl or digital streaming, it should sound really close to each other, at least to my dying ears. But they don't. There's a significant difference, particularly in the highs and lows. In the early 1980s, the BBC got rid of all their sound engineers. After that, the sound quality went rapidly downhill. Yeah, I know. It's just like phone photography, right? Everybody's taking pictures with their cell phones, and that just takes away everything from, in my opinion, about what makes photography great, you know, and enjoyable. I mean, I get it. You just want to capture moments or memories. You know, I do that myself. You know, I do more cataloging type things with my cell phone because I don't need to be interesting at all. They're just pictures of stuff that I want to just, I need to reference. But, you know, like I take a picture of my odometer before I leave on a photo job so I can record the mileage, and I take a picture of it when I'm done, and the phone will log in the miles on my car, how many miles I drove, and then the location, the day, the timing. So, you know, I use it as a tool for that kind of thing, for my cell phone, but not for photography. Because I get no enjoyment out of using a phone for photography. And that's 99% of why I do photography, is because I enjoy it, not because I'm trying to get an epic image or anything. And DeMorgan says cassette has the same sound as album. Of course, they are still analog. Could be. I haven't played any cassettes lately. I'll have to dig out some cassettes if I can find any. I was never a big cassette guy. I used to listen to a lot of cassettes in my car. Um, but I was never a big cassette guy. I always liked albums or just listen to the radio. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, like junior high, high school cassettes, I did enjoy cassettes then, but I wasn't I wasn't into music so much beyond what kids are into music. And then DeMorgan says master CDs are 32-bit converted down to 24-bit for near consumer use. Oh, okay. Yeah, 24-bit would definitely give you much wider dynamic range than I would possibly hear. For a photographer, lose your hands or your eyes. Let's not go there. But it would definitely have to be your hands. My new antenna, but then at that point, then ergonomics is not an issue, right? You can just focus on your photography and not how you're holding the camera. And a new antenna for my scanner. I'm surprised the scanner industry is still a thing. Um, you know, because a lot of the transmissions now are all encrypted, so all you hear are just digital tones, right? But yeah, I used to play with scanning a little bit too. And DeMorgan says, when I owned an Arfax, we had 2-inch 8 tracks and recording rooms, so once the drummer laid down 2, people could record at the same time. Oh, okay. And then Draco says, just saw Force Guard's vid where he recommended Rob's channel. Olympus peeps are the friendliest. I find some other brand fans are a little more aggressive. Yeah, we have a great community, I think. The Micro Four Thirds community is awesome. You know, because we're shooting Micro Four Thirds, right? So you know we are already making compromises, technically speaking. So that gives us, I think, a certain amount of flexibility in everything we do, whether it's our social engagements, interacting with other people. We're generally a little bit more forgiving and easygoing, just like we are with our photography. Because, you know, with Micro Four Thirds, there's definitely compromises, but we're okay with that, right? And I think that translates or is an extension of our personality of being more flexible and forgiving, and really focusing on what's important and what's good about other things, other people, right? I mean, if you really want to, you know, you know, if that makes any sense, right? Because I've never run into any kind of malice or unpleasantness with anybody that I've dealt with in Micro Four Thirds, because you know they've always been easygoing. You know, Peter and Jimmy, Rob, and everybody on YouTube, um, all the Joes, right? um, so, and that's again, that's part of the experience of shooting in photography. Is when you socialize with other photographers, especially as a online, doing YouTube. It's been an excellent experience for me on the back end, dealing with other photographers, and then also online, and also with you guys, right? And problem with today's sound engineers is that too many don't actually know what they're doing. I would have no idea. I know nothing about being a sound engineer and what it takes. But I did watch, if you guys ever watch Rick Beato on YouTube, um, he talked about sound engineers and or people that do production for songs and albums, right? And a lot of them are older like us, in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're some of the top, if not the best sound engineers or production engineers in the industry. Even though their hearing by, you know, by way of age is not as good as someone that's younger, but they still produce, top selling albums and top sounding albums that sound amazing, because of their experience, and not so much because of their ability to actually hear every frequency. Um, but yeah, definitely check out Rick Beato. He's an old guy like us, like me, I should say, and he's a trip to watch sometimes. If you're into music, if you're not into music, don't watch his channel. There's better things to do. And that way, when I get close to trains, I'll know when they call me. Bands flew in a lot for that. Of course, it was in the building right off the runway. Got out, lay down your track, and fly off. And Stephen Page is going to get 35mm camera again. Awesome. If you're very competent with your digital camera, like you're comfortable with that, I think it's a good time to try 35mm again. Go back and just for fun, right? It's definitely, if it's not nostalgic, definitely a very different experience, right? I'm very nostalgic with it, but it's also a very different experience if you've never shot film before and you're really good with digital or competent. You don't have to be master, but uh, definitely, I highly recommend shooting film after you've become proficient with photography and understand the fundamentals, right? Then going into film will give you a much different experience with photography on many, many levels. And yes, the ears, just like cell phone photographers, don't have eyes. Um, Lauren says, Rob, Google knows where you went to photograph. This is all which is required. Think of the matching ads. Yes. And DeMorgan says, L cassette, the wide ones. Regular cassettes are not so good. Oh, okay. I've never seen an L cassette. I've seen micro cassettes, which are worse than regulars. And Lauren says, I miss the 60s music explosion. Just so much new stuff going on back then, and the day the Beatles landed on the moon. Yeah, the 60s were definitely, uh, and the 70s for the most part, I think. What I really liked about music is that the process itself was very human, you know? You would go into a studio, the band would go into a studio and just start to play a song and record it. Whereas now it's like everything is is very like synthetic in a way, right? It could be one guy with a laptop making a song, technically, right? Uh, but even if you're in a full-on studio production type environment, you're on a track or a click, Your timing is perfect. The music timing is perfect. But in the 60s and 70s, you know, they go a little bit offbeat sometimes, right? Because they're human. And it's a very natural, organic way to listen. You know, the music back then was very organic, I guess is the best way to put it. And also, I think there was a lot of variation in music where and you know they used more chords. The beat would change a lot. You know, you'd start out kind of slow, then there'd be a fast part, then it would slow down again. Um, and then there was nothing synthetic about it. You know, you had kick drums; they were real drums. You know, you had cymbals and hi-hats and all that. You know, there's a drummer there. And the bass was an actual bass. It wasn't some synthesized thing. Pianos and keyboards were a real thing. And uh, so, again, I listened to it for or appreciate it more because I know it was an organic process or a natural human process of making the music, how it's written. You know, they didn't have tons of data points to say this is what makes a hit song, right? They made music that came from their own hearts and mind and wrote music from their own hearts and mind versus a lot of music today I feel like was written to be popular. So there's a lot of statistics driving the music that we hear today. Just my opinion. And it's hard to hear something original. It sounds, you know, all the music, modern music I hear now sounds so um, cookie cutter to me, right? You got the same beat, the same chords, the hi-hats, the claps, and the only thing that makes the music distinctive to me now is when I hear a really good voice. You know, if I hear a beautiful voice, I almost don't even care about the music underlying it so much as the voice that I hear. And that's where I think stars are made and why some do very well and others do not, you know, is because of the human part of that, the voice. Um, okay, anyway, lots of music talk today. Um, I often get asked by my colleagues in the software industry why artists like myself spend 5 years at art school. The answer is that it takes that long to learn how to observe, yes. And nature says the M43rd community are great. Yes, some compromise, but hey, do you want to take 1,000 millimeter telephoto? I know, right? And Randy went to art school for 4 years. Wow. And nature says, just use my ears as sound engineer and got results which everyone loved. Yes. And George Martin was the fifth Beatle. Not a huge Beatle fan. I like some of their songs, but um, Dave Nelson says Beato is the bee's knees. He was more trivia than anyone and has face-to-face experience with so many people. Yeah, Beato is really good. I've never talked about him before because it's a music channel, but if you're into music, I definitely recommend checking out Rick Beato's channel. And thinking back to the advent of desktop publishing, those guys destroyed centuries of typographers' work through their ignorance. Modern typography sucks. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that genre at all. Randy says, gonna be 80 degrees here in locale today. Wow, nice. If I can get a nice sunny day with no wind, I can handle in the 40s, even high 30s pretty easily. But if you throw in, you know, any kind of wind over 10 miles an hour, oh, you know, it has to be in the 50s or 60s for me to tolerate that. Look at some old Motown Phil Spector sounds if you want real live and dynamic sound with a plate reverb unit. Oh, interesting. I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna save that as a note. I can never remember things. Got it. And Lauren says, film is fine, but I do recall the days when every snap cost 50 cents. Not going to back to that. More like $1 a shot now, and film is less forgiving. Yeah. Like I said, it's not about the ultimate image. You know, you're definitely invested financially and also in terms of your time into every picture. So film is definitely something, you know, do once in a while is fine. And if you really love it, yeah, go for it. Money, no object. But I still recommend shooting film if you can, if you have the patience for it and the money. Because yeah, you're going to spend $15, maybe $20 for a roll of film with the developing, and you'll get what, 24 to 36 shots. And but it's not about the final images, really. It's about the process. Like I've been saying almost the whole stream today, it's about the process and enjoying that time. You know, if you, you know, some people might hate it. Some people never go back, like DeMorkin, right? It's okay. And when you go, Serge says, or I'm sorry, Chuck says, tapes have audible hiss, and you need to use a Dolby system to shift the frequencies to get rid of it. Yeah. And when you go for a photo walk in nature, do you listen to music? For me, it inspires me. No, I don't listen to music while I'm photo walking. I try to be very aware of my environment when I'm out. I'm just paranoid that way, like somebody walking up to me or a bear coming around the corner. Listening to music, I never listen to music when I'm jogging or anytime I'm outside. I generally don't listen to music outside. I have to be very conscious of my environment, just paranoid. In the house though, yeah, I crank it. And Chuck says, back in the 70s, there was a competitor to Dolby called DBX, which had a little better specs, so I used that to remove the hiss on all the tapes. Big reel-to-reel, wow. I always thought about getting a reel-to-reel system, but it's expensive to buy a reel-to-reel tape. And I don't know, it's so expensive. And then finding music on reel-to-reel is expensive. And then if you're recording your own music, maybe, but I can't do it. It's just the cost to enjoyment ratio there is not there for me. My money is better spent on a decent amp and preamp and stuff and speakers. Why is the Magrat cat standing on my chest and pounding me with her paws? She doesn't appreciate Rob's live stream. She just likes watching Rob's hands waving. I know. I should be a kung fu guy. You guys been watching Karate Kid on Netflix? Or no, Cobra Kai. Yeah. That's a good one. Oh, Dave, yeah, here's my Go mug. And oh, I only have about 10 minutes to my next stream. Oh, Elaine, hi. I didn't see you come in. And Rick says, oh yes, I tried buying robtrek a couple of times. Technology evades me. I may have postgraduate degrees in computer science, but I couldn't make the payments, tripping me up. And Randy said, I just posted my take of the Rendlesham UFO, Forest UFO incident on Flickr. Oh, cool. The CGI. And Lauren says, I bet reel-to-reel tape machines are lovely cats. Are loved by cats, I'm sorry. I bet. Just a reel-to-reel tape is so cool. You know, it's just, it has that cool factor, but it's just so expensive. Man. But okay, let's call it. I have to get ready for my next stream for photo editing. And it's been great talking to everybody again today and talking about photography and audio or stereo equipment. You know, another passion, not passion, but something I enjoy as well. Just like watches and other things. But reel to reel is so real. So you guys, thanks again for taking time out of your day and spending it with me. I really appreciate that. Don't forget, next week we are doing the Micro Four Thirds online meetup with many of the online photographers that we know, we all know and love. So look forward to that. I'll start promoting it, and again, if you can share it, I'd really appreciate it. But in any case, you guys have a great weekend, what's left of it, and we'll see you again soon.